FAFSA and then applying for financial aid and additional resources you might have. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. So if you started the application or you're stuck with that, I'll be able to guide you with that. So what we do as an office, so we answer questions and provide guidance with assistance to completing both the applications. So the Federal Dream Act, the free application for student aid, which is a FAFSA, or the California Dream Act application, also known as the CADA. We determine student aid eligibility, evaluate special circumstances, package financial aid funds, and then coordinate aid when it comes to federal, state, institutional, scholarships, and student loans. So those are federal and private loans. So financial aid, what's available? So depending on the application you submit, you are eligible for grants, loans, and work, which is federal work study or the LEAP program for those with the California Dream Act application. That's what determines your aid offer. So some students might get some loans or federal work study offered to them, and they're still waiting on their package, when in reality that is their package. So not every section here is included in your package, but these are the three forms of financial aid that we offer when it comes to students attending Cal State Fullerton. So the grants, which is free money that you don't have to pay back, are the federal. There's many more. These are just the most common ones the students are qualified for based on their income information when they submit the FAFSA application, which is the federal Pell Grant, the F, the Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, also known as SEOG grant, and then Cal State grants, which are Cal Grant and then Chafee Grant. And then we also have institutional grants, which are State University Grant. And then the AUP program is more towards students who are in that program. So if you're not part of that program, it's most likely they won't offer it to you unless you apply and get accepted within the EOP program. And then for when it comes to California Dream Act applicants, they only qualify for state aid, which is the Cal Grant or the Chafee Act or the Chafee Grant. And then they also qualify for institutional grant, which is a state university grant. So keep in mind, if you are a Dream Act applicant, you can only get either or. The California state grants, which is Cal Grant only, are specifically for tuition, and the state university grant is also for tuition. So you can only get either or. Usually we give Cal grants, it's very limited. You only could get it for 4 years. And then the state university grant, it's up to your 150% of your units required for your program. So it varies with credentials, undergrad, and then master's students. And then some of the scholarships, which is also free money that we offer, are athletic, academic, theater, music. Keep in mind that these are very competitive. So depending on when you submit your application and when the due date is, we highly suggest that you complete it on time. We also have institutional scholarships. So depending on your department or other resources on campus that offer scholarships, you could apply to those. There's also national. So if you find either we're promoting that national scholarship or you find it within your civic center, or you're referred to the scholarship, you could also apply for them. They just have to send over the information. And then there's also state and local, and again, civil. So you could do your own research. Just make sure the application is legit. They should never charge you for applying for none of these scholarships. Michael, I see your hand is raised. We're gonna save the questions for the end. Or unless you have a question or unless I'm going too fast.
Um, just to quickly recap, the the scholarships for athletic, theater, music, leadership, academic, those are specifically geared towards students who are exclusively in those fields.
You would have to read the requirements, but yes, those will be more for those students who they apply for, or if there's other criteria in the requirements, then you could also apply for them.
Mm.
So we have the scholarship application open. So if you create a general application, it filters them for you and it tells you which ones you're likely to are able to apply for based on the criteria you answered. So it filters them for you to let you know which ones you might be eligible for.
And that's based on my my major currently standing.
Correct, yeah. And then all the other questions you put in, like your GPA, and then if you do outside work, it also filters that as well. It includes it in there.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so the application is open and it is found on our website, so you guys could go ahead and apply. They are due April 2nd. We tend to match it with the CDA and the FAFSA application due date, and they do close on April 2nd unless noted otherwise. So federal work study is money that you work towards, so it's based on need. So depending on your FAFSA application, or if you qualify for the LEAP program, it's where students could find work on campus. It may vary depending on your school schedule and how many hours they offer you, but typically students can work up to 20 hours or less, and then it gets paid directly towards you. So at the end of the month, depending on how many hours you made for the month, that's how you get an earning, and it's always going to be at least minimum wage, never below that. Or if you I know there's some off-campus federal work studies, so if there's tutoring at the library or after-school programs with certain schools, those could also qualify for federal work study, depending on if we have a contract with them.
Uh, but something like a paid internship doesn't factor into this.
It would have to be, is it on campus?
Uh, Probably not.
Yeah, so it most likely won't qualify
Okay.
for federal work study. It could be done towards the LEAD program, which is the California Student Aid Commission's type of federal work study, where it's more of a research base, and that's how you get paid. So it might qualify for that, but you would have to check with them.
Okay.
All right, moving on to the next loan. So it's money that you have to pay back. So here at Cal State Fullerton, we offer two types of loans, depending on your student information. That is your federal direct subsidized loan, and then that's also the unsubsidized loan. So the subsidized loan, you don't build any interest while you're in school, or at least 6 units, or you're enrolled in at least 6 units or more, or depending on your half-time status for your program. So undergraduates are 6 units or more, and master students, it's at least 4 units. And then we also have the unsubsidized loan, which is interest you are accumulating while you're in school. Doesn't mean you have to pay back that money or the interest right there, and as you're building it, you can. That is an option if you don't want to owe as much when you graduate, but it all gets deferred until 6 months after you graduate. So depending once you either stop being enrolled in at least half time or graduate, that's when your interest will accumulate 6 months after that. And then for example, it's hard to, we couldn't put everyone, it depends on your grade level. So freshmen typically qualify for 3,500 in subsidized loan, and combined with unsubsidized, which is 2,000, is 5,500. This is for a dependent student, so it does vary whether you're independent or dependent and your grade level. The current interest rates for the current interest rates for the loans right now are 5.5%. And we also offer Direct Plus loans, which are parent loans under the parent name for students who are typically dorming or they need additional funds to support themselves off campus. And we also have private loans, which can come from your bank or a private lender. Typically, Sally Mae, Discover, those are the typical ones we get. And for the Direct Plus loan, the interest rate right now, it's around 8.5%. So how does financial aid get applied? So financial aid disbursement is always 10 days before the semester starts. Once it gets dispersed, we have a specific date for that. Once it gets dispersed, we disperse it to cashiers, which is the people who are in charge of applying that money towards your tuition and campus fees. Once that gets applied, if you are happen to be dorming, then that refund basically will get applied to your housing charges. If you're not dorming, because some students decide not to dorm, then we'll issue you a refund, or you'll see your out-of-pocket expense. If you have more financial aid accepted than the cost of tuition and fees, and you don't live on campus, you will receive the remaining funds in a form of check or direct deposit. Um, I want to say emphasizing direct deposit because most of the students sometimes don't put the correct address on file, or they miss a letter or a number. And when cashiers tries to send them a check, it delays the process. So you might get that check maybe months later. And if you needed to buy equipment for school or supplies or books or whatever the case might be, we highly encourage students to sign up for direct deposit so you get it as soon as 3 to 5 business days after we disperse financial aid. So financial aid enrollment requirements. So based on the grants you're getting, they all require you to be in at least full-time status, so 12 units or more, to get the full amount. If you are enrolled in less than 12 units, the grants get adjusted as follow. So typically, if you're enrolled in 12 units or more each semester, you get 100% of the grant. If you're in 3/4 of a time, that's 9 units to 11.9 units, you get 75%. And keep in mind that this adjustment won't happen until after census date, which is typically towards I want to say week 8. That's when we start adjusting financial aid. So it is a delayed process. So you might be eligible for financial aid, but since we have to adjust your grant, it won't disperse until later on. And in half-time status, you get 50%. And anything below half-time, which is anything below 6 units, your grant gets canceled. If you're receiving the federal Pell Grant, then you only get 25% of that. And keep in mind that this is all changing. We know that the federal Pell Grant now won't be based on units. So we are going to be adjusting every other grant to correlate with the new federal Pell Grant requirements. So it is subject to change. And then how do we determine your financial aid award letters and how do we determine the need? So we look at cost of attendance, which is the COA. That's your budget for the year. So depending if you're living on campus, off campus, or dorming, there's a specific budget built into the system where it automatically assigns you that depending on the question you answer on the GMAT application or the FAFSA application. And then we take your student aid index, which is the new expected family contribution, and we subtract it from other financial aid. So if you're getting scholarships, we subtract it from that. And then that's how we determine your need. So whatever the need is, that's how we award your grants. So that's either the state university grant, the federal Pell Grant, the F SEOG grant, and then if you're eligible for then the EOP grant. So when it comes to looking at these budgets, there are direct costs and indirect costs. So sometimes, for reference, I don't know if you guys have seen your cost of attendance and it shows you're expected to pay $20,000 or $22,000, depending on your budget that it's set to. That's not the case. I know a lot of students do tend to freak out with that, with reading those numbers. So we look at direct costs so that we only charge you for, if you're just commuting, we only charge you for in-state tuition, which is 6,084. And then campus fee, depending if you're doing labs or your program has additional fees. Typically, it's around $600, $700. And then if you're on campus housing, if you applied for that or have a meal plan, then we also take that into consideration. But typically, the students usually use the first two bullet points with the direct cost, and it roughly comes out to 7,800 for the year. And then you divide that by half, and it's around 3,500 and change for each semester. And then some indirect costs that we don't bill you for, but that still show up on your cost of attendance is for your books, course materials, supplies and equipment, transportation, miscellaneous or personal expenses, and then off-campus food and housing. These numbers are created based on the local income and inflation rates. So that's how we calculate those numbers. So applying for financial aid, the process. So depending if you meet the criteria for the free application for federal student aid, meaning you have a valid social security or are a non-eligible citizen or a citizen, you can apply for the FAFSA application. If those requirements don't apply to you, then you would highly be suggested to complete the California Dream Act application if you have a B540 status. We go into the details a little bit more. So like I said, the free application for federal student aid is you, the student, have a valid social security, are a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, and or eligible non-citizen. Then you complete the application. If you don't meet the criteria for that list, then you would look at the California Dream Act application. So if you don't meet the requirements for them, then you submit that one. And then you would also have to meet the conditions for California AB 540 status. So that would also determine whether you get charged in-state or out-of-state tuition. And the applications did become available December 31st. So you guys are able to apply if you guys haven't done so already. We highly encourage you guys to apply just because it's the priority deadline is going to be here within, we're already going to be in March next week. So it's going to be a month away. So we highly encourage you guys to submit it because the processing time for the new application is a little bit lengthy. So some information with the new applications. So the applications are changing so more students could qualify for financial aid. This was done with Congress called the Simplification Act or Better Future Act that will allow students to be asked less questions. It went from 200 questions to 35 questions. And then it just depends on how you answer them, that they either ask more or just smart questions. Like if you answer yes, then it just skips the rest for you. So it would be easier for more families to qualify for financial aid. And then some students with the upcoming school year might see an increase in their financial aid compared to this year. And then this one is for creating an FSA ID. It's a little bit lengthy, but to summarize, every student and contributor or parent has to have an FSA ID in order to sign the FAFSA online. If you do not have it or your parents are unable to create an FSA ID using the online version, then you would have to submit the paper application and you wouldn't have to do the FSA ID. But the paper application does take about 4 to 6 weeks to process. If you guys do decide to create an FSA ID, these are the questions that you guys are going to be prompted to do. So it's going to more ask personal information, which is name, date of birth, social security number for you or your parent or your contributor, so spouse or step parent, account information, create a username and password, contact info, communication preference. So how do you want to receive notifications, either by mail or email? And then challenging questions, just in case you happen to forget your password, you can reset the account, answering those questions. Keep in mind that depending on when you create the FSA ID, it does take time for them to match with the Social Security Administration. Typically, right now, it is taking about 2 weeks since it's a new system that everyone has to have an FSA ID. So it is taking about 2 weeks. So the sooner you guys do it for your parent or your spouse, the better, because you would be able to submit the application as soon as possible before the April 2nd. And then users without Social Security number, will have to go through a knowledge-based identification process. That information has now been released. Students would have to it's the same way as creating the FSA ID, but there's a box at the bottom under the Social Security box that says, if you don't have a Social Security, just check this box, and it prompts you on to the next steps. If it's unable to prompt you on to the next steps, it gives you a number to call, and that means your account has to be set up manually. So it's the same process, just there's a little box at the end that you just have to click on it. So contributor, so it's no longer parent. That's how it was before parent. It's more contributor now. So who is a contributor to the 2024 FAFSA or DREAM Act application? It's going to be the student spouses if they're married, any biological or adoptive parent, or the parent spouses. That includes step parent if married and providing at least 51% of the support to the student. Who isn't a contributor? So grandparents are not considered contributors. Foster parents are not considered contributors. Legal guardians are also not considered contributors. Brothers, sisters, aunts, and uncles, even if they help or raise the student, or at least providing 51%, they won't count. It would just be focused on the student information. So that was one of the key changes to the new FAFSA application. And typically the GMAT application tends to mirror the FAFSA application. So in the new application for them, it would be asking for contributor information as well. So step one for contributors creating um, for you to add either your spouse or your parent to your FAFSA. Once you answer the student portion information, so it's going to ask you for your personal information, your grade level, the school you plan to send this information to, and your income and asset information. Once you do that, if you are required to include a contributor, it's going to prompt you to enter their email address, and then your parent or spouse will get the email letting them know that, hey, like so and so invited you to be a contributor to their FAFSA application, sign in to accept response. So they have to either accept or decline. If once they get the email, they click on it, it takes them to the FAFSA website. They would sign in using their FSA ID, so account and username that they created when making the account. And then they review the information that the student provided, and make sure that that information is correct. And it's going to ask them now the income information. It's not going to ask to enter. There's no longer entering it manually. It's just going to ask them to consent to the IRS information transfer on the FAFSA. If they do not consent to that, then it's going to let them know, it's going to give them a warning sign, hey, um, the student, the student's name, is not going to be eligible for any federal aid or state aid, only student loans. And that's an unsubsidized loan. Are you sure you want to decline response? And then they have the option to change it or not. And then once they submit the response and submit the application, they will be able to sign the FAFSA application or DREAM Act application, because again, it mirrors the same process. So an important note to take for parents or spouses, being a contributor does not implicate financial responsibilities. It just That's how we determine financial need for the student and how much was made within that household. And keep in mind that the income information is from 2 years prior, so we are looking at 2022 information as of now. I know some events happen where students or parents are no longer employed for whatever the reason might be. So you can always do a change of income. That's what we call it. So those are special circumstances that our office does. I believe that's the next slide. But for this one, dependency status. So this is the popular question in our office is I provide for myself. I live on my own. I pay for my own food. I haven't lived with my parents since I graduated high school. Unfortunately, under the Department of Education, their rules for dependency status is different from our perspective or how we know it. So for the 2024-2025, a student is considered independent if they meet one of the following criteria. So these are all the questions that it is going to ask you on the FAFSA application to answer yes or no. Typically, the first one, were you born before January 1st, 2001? Depending on how you answer that, it skips the rest, except for the dependent question or if you're married. Um, and if you answer, depending on how you answer, then it asks you the following questions. If you are able to answer yes to any of the following questions, then you are considered a dependent student and you have to provide your parent information. Now again, there are some circumstances where things do happen. So you could always submit an appeal to our office so we could reevaluate your financial need. And depending if it gets approved, then that's what we offer more aid depending on your income only. Oh, so I guess it doesn't talk about income appeals. But yes, if your income changed from 2022, our office will release more information during the summer on how to go about to submitting that income appeal change. Typically, you meet with one of our counselors, so me or my other colleagues, and we discuss the situation and we calculate some numbers and we determine whether it would be a best fit for you to do the income appeal or if it doesn't change anything on your FAFSA application, depending on how much was the difference between the income now and 2022. So once you complete the FAFSA and the California GMAT application, make sure to include our school code, which is 001137. The information will be sent to our office. We are expected to get them in the middle of March, and that's when you'll be able to make some adjustments, or if you messed up a question and you want to go back and answer it, that's when you'll be able to do that as well. We anticipate notifying students, typically for incoming students, before the May 1st deadline. As of 2 weeks ago, this was changed to May 15th. So for incoming students, they would be let know by May 15th, the latest of what they qualify for. For continuing students, so if you're going on to your second, third, or last year, we typically don't release financial aid during the summer until during the summer. So around July is when we'll start sending notifications to those students. So be sure to check your our website for more information to come of when specifically those dates would be available for students to check their awards. And if you are selected for verification, make sure to submit those documents with the assigned deadline in your student center to ensure that you get the correct award offers and you get them on time when we disperse financial aid so you don't get dropped from your classes or have to set up a payment plan. And lastly, just a recap of what we talked about. Submit your California Dream Act application or FAFSA application by April 2nd, 2024. So that is the deadline. And then visit your student homepage for any tasks during spring semester. So typically they won't show up until the end of May. And then submit the document deadline by the priority deadline. Again, it depends on when your application was submitted. And then the due date is going to be listed on your student center. And then that's when we'll be able to give you your awards so you could view them and then also receive the money for if you're attending summer for summer. And then where we get our information. So if you do have any other questions or you want to look into some of the changes that were discussed here. We do have the federal student aid, so that's studentaid.gov. They have all that, that's where we get all our information, and that's what we publish on our website and our Instagram page. And then we also have the California Student Aid Commission, so they are in charge of the Dream Act application. They are also in charge of the Cal Grant and Chafee Grant and the Middle Class Scholarship. So they will notify you if you're eligible, and you could also see maybe submit the Dream Act application if it's been processed or if it's pending depending on if you have any requirements to do with them. And then lastly, our office hours. So we are located in Gordon Hall, right in front of Carl's Jr., room 146, Monday through, well, every day, but it's specifically some hours, like Wednesdays, we open at 12:30 and close at 5. And then our phone service usually close Monday through Thursday at 6, and then Friday we close at 5. And that completes the presentation. So do you guys have any questions?